Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of a day in the life of the Treehouse, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical, seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. The day begins before Finn even opens his eyes. Outside, the land of O is still stretching awake, the sky just starting to pull off its starry blanket. Gentle pink-orange light spills across the horizon and slips through the leafy branches of a giant tree that towers proudly on a green hill. At its base, roots dig deep into soft earth. At its top, wooden windows begin to glow warm with the slow rise of the sun. Inside this tree, our treehouse, everything is still. A light breeze brushes against a slightly cracked window pane, making it creak just a little. It's the kind of creak that feels friendly, lived in. A soft draft carries in the smell of grass, bark, and morning dew. BMO, nestled on a shelf nearby, gives a quiet electronic sigh in sleep mode. Its little screen flickers dimly, as if dreaming of breakfast cartoons and button-mashing arcade games. Downstairs, Jake is the first one to stir. Sprawled across the couch like a melted scoop of golden butter, his long, stretchy limbs are draped lazily over armrests, pillows, and even a bit of the floor. One ear twitches as the light touches his face. He yawns, loudly and long, his jaw stretching open like a tuba's bell, then curls inward again with a soft, satisfied groan. He's not quite ready to be awake yet, but his nose is already sniffing the air, seeking breakfast that hasn't started cooking yet. Up in the loft, wrapped in a blanket that's been patched with love over years of adventures, Finn is still asleep. He's curled into himself, one leg kicked out of the sheets, one sock half off. His hair is wild, fluffy, and soft, having escaped his usual white hat in the middle of the night. His breathing is slow and even, the kind of deep sleep only someone young, brave, and at peace could ever manage. A small bird lands gently on the branch outside his window. It gives a single, quiet chirp. Finn stirs. He doesn't sit up right away. Instead, his hand reaches out from under the blanket and fumbles for a little alarm clock shaped like a snail. He knocks it over by accident. A groggy escapes him as he rolls over, facing the soft morning light that's now bathing the wooden floor in golden lines. He rubs his eyes with the back of his hand, blinks once, then again. Somewhere below, a kettle begins to whistle softly. Finn swings his legs over the edge of the bed and lets them dangle. The floor creaks beneath him. Not loud, not sudden. Just that familiar groan of old wood and friendship sounds that belong in the treehouse. Downstairs, Jake is now halfway to the kitchen. He's still stretching, literally. One arm elongates toward the counter as he yawns again, this time cracking his back with a rubbery twist. He opens the cupboard lazily with a noodle-like limb and pulls out a bag of pancake mix. Another stretch brings a frying pan from its hook. The stove clicks on with a flicker of blue flame, and the soft scent of butter hits the air. Back upstairs, Finn is putting on his hat. He adjusts it carefully, like a little ritual, like how you might fluff your pillow just right before drifting off. With the hat in place, he hops down the ladder barefoot and wanders into the main room, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning, bro," Jake mumbles, his snout deep in a mixing bowl. Finn yawns in response, then makes a beeline for the couch. He drops into it like a soft sack of laundry, eyes half closed but smiling. BMO blinks awake just then, stretching its little arms and letting out a cheerful digital hum. "Good morning, sleepy butts," it sings, hopping off the shelf. The treehouse hums to life gently, not with alarms or noise or duty, but with warmth, with the smell of batter on a hot pan, of sunlight on wood, and of the low, easy chatter between two brothers starting their day the way they always do. "Bacon pancakes?" Finn asks without opening his eyes. Jake winks. "What else?" Jake hums softly to himself an offbeat little tune that sounds suspiciously like the Bacon Pancakes song, only slower, sleepier, and with a bit of jazzy flair. The pan sizzles as he pours in the batter, the rich scent instantly blooming into the room like a welcome hug. Finn sits up a little straighter now, stretching his arms over his head with a long groan that turns into a quiet laugh. He watches his best friend glide across the kitchen like a stretchy breakfast wizard, flipping pancakes with one hand, while the other grabs syrup from the shelf behind him without even looking. Outside, the sun has now climbed a little higher. Its light filters through the leafy canopy above the treehouse, casting slow-moving shadows that dance lazily across the walls. A gentle breeze carries the distant sounds of a waking forest, birds singing in round harmonies, leaves rustling, and maybe even the faint laughter of a gnome starting his own odd little deki. "Want apple slices with these?" Jake calls over his shoulder. Finn thinks for a moment. "Nah, just the classics today." BMO hops up beside him on the couch and flips on its screen, displaying a soft yellow sunrise and a sleepy-faced digital chicken clucking the time. "It's cozy o'clock." Finn chuckles and leans his head back against the cushions. "Best time of day." Jake slides over with a plate balanced on one hand and a mug of hot cocoa in the other. The cocoa steams gently, tiny marshmallows bobbing like sleepy clouds. He sets it down on the small table with a soft clink. Then comes the plate. 3 thick pancakes stacked high, syrup trickling down the sides in slow amber ribbons, and of course, crispy bacon, perfectly cooked. Finn's eyes light up. "You're a wizard, Jake." Jake bows dramatically, his head stretching so far down it boops the floor. Thank you. They sit together at the little wooden table near the window. Outside, a bee lazily hovers past, investigating a flower box filled with sleepy yellow blooms. It doesn't stay long, just enough to be noticed and then gone again. Finn takes his first bite and lets out a little sigh. Tastes like Saturday." Jake nods. "Exactly. Not quite a mission day. Not quite a lazy blob day. It's a let's just be alive in our house day." BMO joins them at the table with a plastic juice box and quietly starts narrating imaginary news headlines. This just in. Finn and Jake are extremely cozy this morning. Citizens of Ooh are jealous. Finn and Jake both laugh, mouths full. And for a while, that's all there is, just the soft sounds of breakfast being eaten, the occasional clatter of a fork, and the quiet drone of BMO announcing the imaginary weather. "Today's forecast, 100% chance of naps." Once the plates are mostly cleared and cocoa mugs nearly empty, Finn stretches his arms out and yawns again, big this time. The kind of yawn that makes your toes curl and your shoulders roll. "Should we do something today?" he asks, eyes half-lidded again. Jake flops sideways on the bench, one leg casually extending all the way across the floor. "Define something." Finn grins. "Like go outside?" Jake makes a sound somewhere between a groan and a giggle. Only if outside comes inside. They sit in content silence for a while longer. Finn fiddles with a toothpick-sized wooden sword he carved months ago, tapping it gently on the table. The morning feels soft around the edges, like the world knows not to interrupt them just yet. Eventually, the sunlight hits the wooden walls just right, lighting up a dusty jar on the shelf, a small treasure collection from their adventures, a golden snail shell, a single button from a cosmic being's jacket, a leaf from a tree that only blooms in dreams. Finn stands and walks over to it, turning the jar gently in his hands. "Do you ever think we'll have mornings like this when we're old?" he asks. Jake, still on the bench, peeks up. "Old like tree trunks old?" "Yeah," Finn replies, turning the jar upside down and watching the trinkets settle. "Old and weird and settled." Jake shrugs. "I don't know. If we're still in the treehouse, I think it'll be the same. just slower. And maybe we'll forget where we put stuff. BMO hops off the table. I'll remind you. Jake points at BMO. See, we got built-in memory storage. We're good. Finn smiles to himself and sets the jar back on the shelf a little more centered than it was before. Then he heads back to the couch, lying down with a satisfied sigh. The room now smells like syrup and sun-warmed wood. The breeze outside has picked up a little, rustling the leaves gently against the outer walls. There's no sense of rush, no quest waiting at the door, just the steady, unhurried tick of time passing in the most comforting way. Finn closes his eyes again. Not to sleep, just to exist. Jake plays a soft little chord on his viola from across the room, fingers lazy but sure. It fills the air like a lullaby to the morning itself. Finn lies still on the couch, one arm folded under his head, the other resting on his chest. His eyes are closed, but he's not asleep, just listening, letting the music wash over him like sunlight for the ears. Across the room, Jake plays on instinct, not thought. His fingers move slowly, dreamily, guided by memory and mood. A tune he might have heard once in a Candy Kingdom alleyway, or maybe in a dream. He doesn't remember, doesn't need to. BMO, meanwhile, has pulled out a sketch pad and is sitting on the floor carefully drawing. Crayon in hand, it hums a quiet tune that somehow harmonizes with Jake's music. Every now and then, BMO pauses to admire the drawing, a cartoonish version of the morning, with Finn's head 3 times too big and Jake's limbs twisting into hearts. Outside, the tree creaks ever so slightly in the breeze, a language all its own. The sounds of distant birds and wind chimes join in the quiet chorus. Somewhere, a deer-like creature bounds across the field near the base of the hill, its hooves barely brushing the grass. Inside, it's as though time has slowed to a crawl, the kind of crawl that doesn't bother you. The kind that lets you notice every small thing, the way dust dances in a sunbeam, or how the couch fabric feels cool in the shadows and warm where the light touches it. Jake finishes the last note of his melody with a soft flourish, then lets the viola rest across his lap. Finn cracks one eye open. That was nice? Jake grins. I call it Breakfast Sofa Daydream Number 4. Finn chuckles. Sounds like a hit. Jake leans back, hands behind his head. I'm thinking of releasing an album, songs to stretch to. Limited edition, 1 copy. They both laugh, not too loud, just enough to ripple the piece a little before it settles again. BMO stands and proudly holds up its drawing. You guys look very heroic today. Finn sits up just enough to see. Whoa, my chin looks super strong. Strong with justice, BMO nods. Jake peers over. Why am I holding a sandwich that's also a sword? BMO shrugs. Art is mysterious. They take a moment to admire it together, as if it's a rare masterpiece. Then BMO carefully tapes the drawing to the wall beside the kitchen, right next to a picture of the trio riding a cloud. The treehouse has little memories like that scattered everywhere, tiny, mismatched pieces of a life well lived. A rock painted like a face from that one day they tried rock theater. A bottle cap from the soda that accidentally summoned a cloud demon. Even a small, badly sewn pillow that says nap zone in bright, uneven thread. None of it matches. All of it belongs. Finn stands up and stretches, back cracking gently. He looks out the window for a long moment, watching the trees sway. You know, he says softly, sometimes I forget the world can be this quiet. Jake doesn't answer right away. He's watching too. Just watching. Just being. After a beat, he says, "Yeah, like the world's letting us breathe for a second." Finn smiles and turns away from the window. "So stretch break?" Jake's eyes light up. "Ooh, yeah. Big noodle style or tiny yoga frog style?" Finn laughs. "You pick." Jake closes his eyes like he's consulting a sacred scroll. "Noodle style. Definitely." And with that, the stretching begins. Jake elongates his limbs until they spiral around the ceiling beams like lazy vines, twisting and swaying. Finn rolls his shoulders, then starts a series of exaggerated lunges, toes pointed, arms sweeping dramatically through the air like he's dancing with invisible swords. BMO starts playing gentle ambient music from its speaker, something with chimes and the sound of a bubbling brook. For the next few minutes, the treehouse becomes a ballet of limbs and laughter. Jake's legs stretch across the ceiling and down the stairs, his feet tapping lightly to the beat. Finn's balance poses are part warrior, part kid pretending to be a plant. BMO joins in by standing perfectly still on one leg and announcing, "I am a heron." Eventually, they all collapse back onto the floor in a warm, tangled pile of giggles and long limbs. Finn exhales deeply, lying on his back, staring up at the leafy canopy visible through the skylight above. Jake's head rests nearby, ears flopped outward like wings. "You ever think about how weird this place is?" he asks lazily. "The treehouse?" Finn turns his head. "Nah, it's just home." Jake nods, eyes half closed. "Yeah, weird and wonderful." BMO curls up beside them, letting out a digital sigh that almost sounds like a purring cat. "This is the part of the day where we don't move." Finn raises one hand lazily into the air. "Second it." Jake mumbles, "Motion carried." And just like that, the silence returns, not empty, not still, but full of comfort, of presence, of the kind of peaceful morning that only exists when you feel safe, warm, and completely unbothered by the outside world. The treehouse breathes with them walls groaning gently, windows glowing gold. A few pancakes remain on the stove, kept warm for later. Outside, the world carries on. Inside, time waits. Eventually, it's the smell of slightly crispy pancakes and the faint gurgle of the kettle reheating that stirs them. Finn rolls onto his side and props himself up on one elbow. Did we just stretch ourselves into a nap? Jake, still sprawled out like a lazy river across the floor, doesn't open his eyes. "I call it active rest. Very advanced technique." BMO hums in agreement. "Scientifically, you were all horizontal for approximately 28 minutes and 32 seconds. "Nice," Finn whispers like they've just set a world record. There's no rush to get up. No missions waiting. No emergencies. No battles. No wild magic storms. Just the quiet ticking of the wall clock and the slow swing of a dream catcher in the breeze. The dream catcher had been a gift from tree trunks. Finn remembers the day she brought it over in a basket filled with mini apple pies. She said it would keep weird nightmares with elbows away. It hasn't failed them yet. The sunlight now fills the room completely. No longer golden and sleepy, but soft and bright. A late morning light that makes the wood floors warm to the touch and casts long, leafy shadows that sway gently in rhythm with the branches above. Finn finally stands and walks toward the kitchen, stretching his arms over his head, his spine cracking again in a chain of satisfying pops. "I'm gonna warm up the leftovers," he says, already grabbing a pan. Jake's legs retract with a slow zip, and he pulls himself upright with exaggerated effort. We might break a world record for slowest morning ever. "Perfect pace," Finn replies, flipping a pancake onto the skillet with a practiced hand. Jake joins him at the counter, scooping a few of the still warm slices of bacon onto a plate. They work together in rhythm without needing to talk, reheating, plating, pouring 2 more mugs of cocoa. It's like a dance they've done 1,000 times, each move familiar and easy. They take their plates to the little dining nook beside the window. The table there is slightly crooked, one leg shorter than the others, so Jake leans his elbow just right to balance it. Finn sits cross-legged in his chair, munching slowly. Outside, the hill below the treehouse is covered in soft summer green grass. Lady Rainicorn floats lazily in the distance, weaving through a patch of low clouds like a pastel ribbon. A few firewolves howl far off, not in alarm, just calling to each other across the woods. Jake watches it all quietly. You ever think how lucky we are? Finn tilts his head. To live here? Jake nods, chewing. To wake up and have breakfast and stretch and draw and listen to music and not, save the world today. Finn grins. I think that's exactly why we're lucky. Jake raises his mug. Today's with no dragons. Finn clinks his cocoa against it. 2 quiet mornings in the treehouse. They sip slowly, then sink back into the cushions of their chairs, plates empty, hands warm around their mugs. BMO waddles over and sits at the table with a very serious expression. Today's to-do list, BMO begins, has been updated. New tasks: 1, continue lounging; 2, optional hammock time; 3, possible nap in sunbeam. Jake looks impressed. That's a solid plan. Finn nods thoughtfully. We should schedule that sunbeam nap carefully. They move fast this time of day. The 3 of them get up and shuffle toward the hammock room, where soft netting stretches between 2 support beams, bathed in golden sunlight that filters down through circular skylights. This room always smells like cotton, and late mornings, like the air itself, has been steeped in naps. Jake flops in first, his body instantly molding to the shape of the netting like warm taffy. Finn climbs in beside him, his legs draping casually over Jake's stomach, arms folded behind his head. BMO finds a sunny patch of floor and lays flat like a little blue pancake. They lie there without speaking. There's no need. The treehouse creaks softly, cradling them like it always has. Outside wind passes through the leaves in slow sighs, whispering through the open windows. This is a kind of magic all its own. The magic of pause, of being present without pressure. The world can wait. The grass will still be green, and the clouds will still drift, and the candy kingdom will be just fine without them for 1 more hour. A single bee buzzes past the window and disappears just as quickly. Finn reaches for a paperback book that had been left beside the hammock days ago. It's dog-eared and probably half-read, full of sketches and pressed leaves from past adventures. He flips through a few pages, then stops, not to read, just to look. Jake stretches an arm lazily toward the ceiling and slowly wiggles his fingers like they're feeling the shape of the air. I think I'm officially in noodle mode now. Finn nods, not looking up. You've achieved maximum stretch zen. BMO's screen flickers into a pixelated fireplace and plays the sound of gentle crackling wood. The sound fits perfectly with the warm air, the hammock's sway, and the light tapping of leaves outside. Outside, the sunlight dances on the windows. Inside, the 3 of them rest. Not because they're tired, but because resting is part of living. Part of loving your home, your friends, and the quiet moments that build the foundation of all the big ones. The treehouse sways slightly in the breeze, leaves rustling like a lullaby. And morning slips softly into noon. A little while later, The gentle hum of BMO's pixelated fireplace fades, and the screen returns to a cheerful, blinking face. "Wake-up protocol complete," BMO announces in a half-whisper. "Time to resume cozy operations." The hammock still sways a little. Jake stretches and lets out a long yawn, limbs slowly retracting from their full sprawl. Finn opens one eye, gives a sleepy smile, then slides off the hammock with a soft thud. His hair's all tousled again, but he doesn't seem to care. He rubs his face with both hands and gives a stretch so dramatic it looks like he's reaching for a cloud outside the window. A few pancake crumbs still rest on a plate by the sink, like tiny memories of round one. Jake starts rummaging through the cabinets with the enthusiasm of someone searching for treasure. "Let's see what we got. Oats? Nah. Bag of dried pickle chips? Maybe. Marshmallow cereal from 5 quests ago? Definitely." Finn laughs as he sets out 3 mismatched bowls. "We really got to organize our pantry." Jake pulls out a jar of peanut butter shaped like a wizard's hat. "Or we lean into the chaos." BMO hops up onto the counter and starts assembling a very precise-looking fruit sculpture. Tiny apple slices form the base, topped with grapes. A few pancake crumbs still rest on a plate by the sink, like tiny memories of round one. Jake starts rummaging through the cabinets with the enthusiasm of someone searching for treasure. "Let's see what we've got. Oats? Nah. Bag of dried pickle chips? Maybe. Marshmallow cereal from 5 quests ago? Definitely." Finn laughs as he sets out 3 mismatched bowls. "We really got to organize our pantry." Jake pulls out a jar of peanut butter shaped like a wizard's hat. "Or we lean into the chaos." BMO hops up onto the counter and starts assembling a very precise-looking fruit sculpture. Tiny apples, then crowned with a perfectly peeled orange wedge. Finn watches, impressed. "BMO, are you, making a tiny fruit castle?" "I am constructing Citradel, the capital of Brunchfast Kingdom," BMO says proudly, arranging 2 blueberries like defensive towers. Jake grins. "Do we get to eat the king?" "No," BMO replies firmly. "But you may apply for citizenship." Finn giggles as he pours milk into the bowls. Jake opens the marshmallow cereal and dumps a comically large amount into his, sending a few marshmallows bouncing across the table like tiny pastel meteors. They all sit at the round kitchen table once more. Finn and Jake slouched and smiling, BMO perched proudly beside the fruit castle like a royal chef. "Okay," Jake says through a mouthful of sugar cereal. "Important question of the day. Who would win in a race? Muscle Princess on rollerblades, or Shelby riding inside a teacup pulled by ants?" Finn immediately gasps. "Shelby. Easy. Ants have that teamwork synergy." Jake narrows his eyes. "But Muscle Princess has pure leg strength. And rollerblades add +5 to speed." "Yeah," Finn replies. "But teacup aerodynamics." BMO chimes in. "You are both incorrect. The real winner is Banana Man riding a soapbox rocket powered by dreams." A beat. Then they all laugh. The sunlight filters through the leaves outside, dappling the table in patterns that shift as the breeze moves. The whole scene feels like something out of a dream you barely remember, but never want to end. Jake leans back and balances his spoon on his nose. Finn tries to do the same, but his falls off instantly, clattering onto the table. "I don't get how you do that," Finn mutters, picking it up. "Stretchy skin advantage," Jake replies smugly. BMO presses a button on its chest, and a quiet jingle plays, a bouncy tune that sounds like it belongs in a Saturday morning cartoon. Now presenting the official Brunchfast Hour entertainment. Jake and Finn both cheer softly as BMO begins to dance. It does little spins, waving its arms, then breaks into a silly robot wobble that makes its screen flicker with static hearts. They clap when it finishes, even though there's no audience but them and the sunbeams. And honestly, that's enough. As the wafting scent of warm syrup and toasted oats begins to curl through the treehouse's wooden corridors, BMO springs into action like a little festival of joy. The sound of tiny plastic buttons clicking in anticipation echoes faintly through the kitchen as they balance on a stool, wearing a frilly homemade apron stitched from mismatched patches of cloth. The fabric reads, in faded marker, "Breakfast Boss," a title BMO has proudly appointed themselves. "Finn, Jake, today we're having Pancake Mountain," BMO sings songs, flipping a pancake theatrically high into the air. It lands with a satisfying flop back into the skillet, the edges golden and crisping just right. BMO hums an off-tune rendition of an old Breakfast Kingdom jingle, their voice glitching slightly like a scratched record, but cheerful as ever. Finn lumbers into the room in his usual pajama shorts and fuzzy slippers shaped like mini-lady rainicorns. His hair sticking in every direction, a wild fluff haloed with sleep. He stretches, arms up, spine cracking lightly, then collapses into one of the kitchen's mismatched chairs with a satisfied grunt. I smell BMO's level 10 pancakes. Jake appears next, more composed, somehow already sipping coffee from a floating mug he shaped his arm into. He's doing lazy aerial loops just beneath the ceiling beams. "BMO, you beautiful bundle of batteries, you've outdone yourself," he says as he drifts down and elongates his snout into a scoop to swipe a pat of melting butter onto a stack of pancakes. "You say that every morning," BMO chirps, spinning in place. "But I like hearing it anyway. Breakfast is rarely just food in the treehouse. It's a moment of quiet ritual." Finn grabs the syrup and begins doodling with it on his pancake, drawing a happy face before flattening it under a second flapjack. Jake twirls his pancakes up into a burrito and eats it sideways while recounting a dream he had involving a ballroom, a jelly bean king, and an underground jazz competition. Finn's laughter bounces through the room like a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves of the great treehouse itself. Wait, what instrument did you play?" "Accordion, duh," Jake answers, stretching his belly out like bellows. He produces a low, way amp sound, clearly proud of the reenactment. BMO starts serving out memory juice, which is just orange juice with a single blue sprinkle in it. No one knows where the sprinkles came from, but they're part of the tradition now. Finn drinks his and suddenly remembers the time he and Jake raced ducks in the pond, and one duck turned out to be a mini robot piloted by Ice King in disguise. They all groan at the memory, but fondly. "Dude, that was the same day you tried to teach that worm to do kung fu," Jake reminds him, tail tapping against the floor as he chuckles. "You spent hours trying to get it to punch a leaf." "It almost did, though," Finn insists. "You saw it twitch." BMO is now cutting their own pancake with the side of a spoon, very delicately. "Breakfast should always have stories in it," they declare matter-of-factly. "It makes the flavors stronger." "Couldn't agree more," Jake says, already halfway through his second helping. He absent-mindedly shapes his ear into a little spatula and flips a pancake from the stove onto his plate mid-air. The window beside the breakfast table frames the soft glow of morning light perfectly now. Outside, birds dart back and forth between the lower branches of the treehouse, occasionally pausing to sing a chirpy tune that sounds suspiciously similar to the theme from Guardians of the Sun Kingdom. Finn points this out, and they all stop to listen for a few seconds. "Maybe they're fans," Finn jokes. BMO gasps. "Do you think they want autographs? I have stickers." "Sign a twig for 'em," Jake quips, stretching out his leg to bop BMO gently on the head like a high five. The rhythm of breakfast has its own sleepy tempo. It's not hurried. There are no emergencies, no evil monsters at the door, no princesses in peril, just the glow of a peaceful morning, the laughter of best friends, and a smell in the air that's warm buttery, and a little like joy. BMO chirps cheerfully. "Your eggs are emotionally fulfilled now," and presents the plate like a master chef. Finn giggles, rubbing sleep from his eyes as Jake plops next to him at the table, stretching lazily. "Man, BMO," Jake says between yawns. "These eggs are vibing with my aura today." BMO spins once and does a tiny bow. "That is because I infused them with optimal levels of morning joy." Finn leans forward, taking a forkful. "Yeah, they taste like happiness and sunshine." "Did you sprinkle in some cinnamon or something?" "No," BMO replies with mock seriousness. "I whispered motivational phrases to them while they were cooking. That's why they're so brave." The table is a charming mess, slightly uneven, old wood with paint smudges from old crafts and battle plans long since forgotten. There's a little plate of peanut butter toast stacked like cards, and a cup of syrup that's definitely not meant for anything on the menu, but somehow made it to the table anyway. Jake's tail reaches lazily across the table, snagging a piece of toast without him moving a muscle. He munches casually, eyes half-lidded in contentment. As the boys eat, BMO begins narrating the official breakfast time in a low, mock documentary voice. Observe the wild adventurers in their native habitat. The small one fuels up with grain-based sustenance, while the yellow, stretchy one prefers high carb and zero responsibility. Finn, playing along, grabs a butter knife and holds it up like a sword. "Beware, intruder. We're armed and delicious." Jake raises an eyebrow. "Finn, buddy, don't sword fight with a butter knife. You'll butter your doom." The two burst into laughter, an echoing, belly-deep kind of laugh that makes the whole treehouse feel warmer. This is the heart of their mornings. Not just the food, not just the routine, but the connection. Two best friends with a lifetime of shared weirdness, navigating their own quiet rituals in the comfort of home. After the meal, BMO hops off the counter and begins cleaning up, not with robotic efficiency, but with their own curious flair. Each plate is treated like a delicate puzzle, each cup stacked with almost theatrical flourish. Every once in a while, BMO sings softly in Korean, a lullaby-like hum that drifts through the kitchen like incense smoke. Meanwhile, Jake pulls out the newspaper. Not that it has much news, just some weird Candy Kingdom headlines and a comic strip featuring Punchy and the Doughboy. He skims it lazily, stretching like taffy in his seat, until he's practically horizontal across two chairs. "Did you see this, Finn?" Jake calls, lifting a folded page. "Mayor Bubblegum says Jellybean traffic's up 200% since Gumball Day. I bet the candy people are bouncing off the walls." Finn grins. "Probably literally. Last time we visited, that Jellybean scout kept accidentally launching himself into a lamp." As BMO finishes stacking dishes with a final clink, they hop up onto the windowsill and open the curtain a little. Sunlight spills in, soft and golden, catching on dust motes dancing lazily in the air. The light reflects off the faded walls, onto old posters and swords hung like art, turning the room into a warm, sleepy cocoon. Finn leans back in his chair, hands behind his head. "You ever think about how lucky we are?" Jake rolls his head toward him. "To have breakfast every morning?" Finn nods. "To have this. The treehouse, each other, BMO, these slow mornings, before the missions, before the monsters, before the weird cosmic stuff. This is the real good stuff, you know?" Jake hums in agreement. "Yeah, peaceful mornings like this. They stick with you, like peanut butter on the roof of your soul." BMO turns from the window. "Do souls have roofs?" Jake shrugs. "I don't know. But if they do, mine's got a skylight and some toast stuck up there." Another round of easy laughter fills the space. It's the kind of moment that doesn't need a quest or an explosion. It doesn't even need a plan. Just being here, being together, is more than enough. Finn stretches and yawns. All right, what's next? Chill for a bit? Watch some BMO video logs. BMO perks up immediately. Yes, I updated my best of compilation last night. It now includes 6 slow-motion montages of me doing backflips. Jake chuckles. Perfect. Bring the volume down to nap level. We'll call it a meditation tape. They gather on the couch, the old one with the stuffing slightly poking out of the arms, and a mysterious candy stain that's been there since season 2 of their lives. Jake morphs into a beanbag chair for maximum comfort, and Finn flops onto him like a tired cat. BMO sets up the tape on the TV, lowering the lights just slightly to match the cozy, post-breakfast stillness. As the footage begins to play, a comical yet oddly soothing series of BMO's daily antics set to ambient synth music. Jake sighs contentedly. This is peak post-breakfast vibes. Finn, already halfway to a nap, mumbles, This might be the best part of the day. And while the pancakes were technically cooling, BMO scurried off to the windowsill, opening it wide to let the warm morning breeze in. The gentle wind caught the scent of syrup and berry jam, letting it waft into the treetop. The sound of birdsong filtered in, too, peaceful, wandering melodies that seemed to echo the quiet joy inside the treehouse. Finn reached for the honey jar. Jake, you want honey on yours, or that weird chili jelly you keep hiding behind the pickles? Jake's head popped up from under the table where he'd been digging for an old comic book. Chili jelly, bro. That stuff slaps. It's a wild ride. Finn wrinkled his nose and slid the jar toward him. Suit yourself, stomach of steel. BMO, now standing in the middle of the table holding a tiny fork, declared, This pancake is now officially under BMO jurisdiction. No bites without proper licensing. Jake playfully swiped at the plate. Then I demand a pancake court trial. Finn leaned on his elbow, grinning. And who's the judge? BMO raised both arms dramatically. I am judge, jury, and breakfast hero. And so began the most relaxed courtroom drama in the history of OO. Jake was the defendant, accused of illegal syrup distribution. Finn volunteered as his legal counsel, armed only with a butter knife and persuasive eyes. BMO paced with seriousness that far exceeded the stakes of the situation. The trial only lasted 5 minutes, ending in a hung jury when Cinnamon Bun, who had wandered in from outside, got distracted by a jar of peanut butter and fell asleep in the sink. Laughter followed, soft, sincere, echoing through the treehouse kitchen as the light shifted slowly overhead. That laughter didn't just come from the jokes, though. It came from how easy things felt. No big monsters, no interdimensional crises, no princess politics or apocalyptic prophecies, just pancakes, jokes, and warm sunbeams. Eventually, the breakfast mess was forgotten in favor of lounging. Jake stretched his body across the couch like a lazy river, arms hanging off one side and tail curled up the lamp. Finn, meanwhile, lay back on the kitchen floor, hands behind his head, staring up at the wooden ceiling, tracing knots and lines in the timber like constellations. BMO clambered into a hammock, between 2 support beams, humming softly to themselves. A gentle electronic tune, not quite a lullaby, not quite a pop song, just something small and sweet. After a few moments, BMO said quietly, You ever think about how nice the world is when we don't have to save it? Jake snorted sleepily. I like saving it. But yeah, days like this, they're treasure. Finn nodded. It's like we're still heroes. Just not the sword-swingy kind today. Just the be-happy kind. The sound of wind rustled the leaves outside. The golden light filtered through the round windows, dancing across the wooden floors like it, too, was just trying to have a good time. Cinnamon Bun snored softly in the sink. There was a gentle rhythm to it all now, unspoken, almost sacred. BMO's gentle song. Jake's tail twitching slowly as he dreamed of bacon rain. Finn quietly chewing on the edge of a pancake that somehow ended up beside him on the floor. Not a single clock ticked. Not a single responsibility intruded. It was just peace. Time moved slowly into the treehouse. Not sluggish, just smooth, like a river with no rush to reach the ocean. Hours could stretch like taffy here, filled with nothing more than small gestures and old jokes and the silence between good friends. Finn rolled over and propped himself up on one elbow. "Hey, Jake, remember when we had that breakfast with the giant worm king in that dream dimension?" Jake yawned without opening his eyes. "The one where he kept crying syrup? Yeah, man. Good pancakes, but very moist vibes. I still got syrup in that one boot." Jake raised a paw and waved it dismissively. "Embrace the syrup, it's a lifestyle." They both laughed again, softly this time, not wanting to wake Cinnamon Bun or break the spell of the moment. Even BMO's humming faded to a whisper. And maybe, just maybe, that was the magic of mornings like this. Not because something grand happened, but because nothing had to. Because it was one of those rare days when the treehouse wasn't a command center or a war room or a magical portal hub. It was just home. A kitchen with warm light, a couch made of old pillows, a sink with a sleeping cinnamon guardian, and three best friends who knew that breakfast didn't always have to be fast or fancy to be sacred. It just had to be shared. So the morning lingered. A pancake here, a nap there, maybe a fart joke, maybe a quiet sigh, all part of the rhythm, all part of the song the treehouse sang when it was finally fully at rest. And in that soft lull they stayed, until eventually, adventure would call again. But not yet. Not this morning. The sun was now higher in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow across the hills of Ooh. The treehouse, ever watchful and welcoming, shimmered slightly in the heat. But inside, things were just beginning to quiet down. The morning playfulness had softened into something gentler, an unspoken rhythm the house knew well. Finn leaned back against the windowsill, sipping the last of a mildly sweet herbal tea that BMO had steeped with a candy cane stir. Jake, meanwhile, stretched himself long and narrow like a scarf, draping lazily from the ceiling beam to the kitchen table. "Might be time for a little wander," Finn said aloud, half to himself, half to Jake, and maybe even a little to the treehouse. It was a shared language, one of glances, memories, and a sense that their day wasn't complete until their feet, or paws, had touched a bit of grass and unknown trail. Jake's ears perked up just enough. "Yeah, man. I feel like my bones need some air. Let's not go too far today, though. I'm vibing with a mellow kind of quest, you know?" And so the decision was made. No grand monster hunts, no sky surfing on magic clouds, just a peaceful wandering, a midday stroll where the trees talk softer and time seems to stretch itself like Jake in a hammock. They stepped out of the treehouse with no map, no destination. The path to nowhere was often the best one. Outside, the world hummed with quiet energy. Birds chirped in soft syncopation. A gentle breeze stirred up scents of honeygrass, distant pine, and the faintest whiff of marshmallow root. The hills rolled out ahead of them like an old song. "Remember that time we tried to build a bread golem out here?" Finn chuckled, pointing toward a slightly misshapen patch of earth. Jake laughed, his chest rumbling like a distant drum. "Yeah. I tried to make him dance, but he just kind of collapsed into a giant crouton." As they walked, they passed the familiar landmarks of their adventures, stones with old carvings, trees they once gave names to, and hidden nooks where past versions of themselves had left little tokens or carved messages in bark. But today, they didn't stop to fight, or fix, or even explore too deeply. They just moved through the land like it was a part of them, as if their presence was just one note in the harmony of this lazy afternoon. Finn bent down to observe a trail of glowing inchworms moving in a perfect line across a log. He didn't touch, didn't interrupt, just watched. Jake noticed a pile of perfectly round pebbles that spelled out "Hi" in a childlike scrawl, probably from a gnome kid or a polite ghost. Then they came across a pond, not the dramatic kind with waterfalls and echoing frogs, but a small, tucked-away pool, shaded by tall grass and home to shy lily pads. Jake plopped down beside it, his body flattening into a perfect lounging mat. Finn joined him, arms crossed behind his head, gazing up at the sky through a leafy frame. Silence settled like a warm blanket. Not an awkward silence, but the kind that only comes between best friends who've lived 1,000 lifetimes together. In that moment, time felt like it paused to listen. A dragonfly hovered close, circling Finn's knee before drifting off. In the still water, they could see the faint reflection of the clouds overhead, shifting ever so slowly. "You know," Jake murmured, "sometimes it feels like the best adventures are the ones where nothing really happens." Finn nodded. "Yeah, just being here feels right." They stayed there for a while, not sleeping, not talking, just being. Eventually, the breeze stirred again. Jake's ears twitched. Finn sat up and stretched, the kind of stretch that makes your spine hum and your brain feel cool and clear. "I think we should loop around the old hill trail before heading back," Finn suggested. Jake gave a little shrug. "Lead the way, bro." The walk back was just as meandering as the way out. They took the long route by design, passing under arching branches and around sleepy toadstool colonies. Finn swung his sword gently through the air, not in battle, but just for the feel of it, like humming an old tune. Jake occasionally turned into a wheel or a bouncy ball just because he could. They found a spot where the grass had grown high, waving like ocean currents. Finn waded into it like it was water, letting it brush against his arms. Jake followed, pretending to be a sea serpent, complete with dramatic sound effects. When they finally reached the gentle slope behind the treehouse, the sun was starting to lower, casting everything in amber. The day wasn't over, but the wander was complete. And the quiet of that midday, stitched with laughter and stillness, would linger in the walls of the treehouse like a faint, comforting song. And with that final satisfying stretch, Finn slipped his sword across his back, giving a little nod to Jake, who had already shape-shifted his legs long and bendy like stilts to peek out the tallest window. "Clear skies, no sign of trouble," Jake said, slowly sinking back down to the floor like melted butter. "Perfect weather for a mellow roam." "Tree Trunk's orchard?" Finn offered, tossing an apple core into the compost bin. "I kind of feel like getting some sunlight." Jake wiggled his eyebrows. "Sunlight and pie?" "Sunlight because of pie," Finn replied, grinning. And so the two made their way out of the treehouse, the big round front door creaking open with a friendly sigh. Outside, the air smelled like grass warmed by sun, like the woods had been baking in peace all morning just for them. Their boots padded softly against the dirt trail as they followed the winding path leading into the deeper forest. They didn't speak much at first. The silence between them was like a warm blanket, comforting, familiar, unspoken. Birds chirped overhead in the canopies, and BMO's distant humming could still faintly be heard as they walked away from home base. After a while, Finn noticed a small stone frog statue beside the path, half buried in moss. He knelt down, brushing a leaf off the top of its head. "We've passed this guy 100 times, but I never really looked at him." Jake hovered behind, peering over. "Oh yeah, forest guardian, or lawn ornament. Depends who you ask." Finn tapped the stone with his knuckle. You think it was always here? Like since before the Mushroom War? Jake shrugged in that loose, carefree way of his. Maybe. Or maybe someone just loved frogs. Some mysteries are better left cozy. They didn't dwell too long. The afternoon was patient and slow-moving, stretching out like Jake himself, inviting them to meander rather than march. Eventually, they reached the edge of Tree Trunk's orchard. The apple trees stood in precise rows, each bearing fruit in shining reds and soft golden greens. Tree Trunks, in her usual sun hat and apron, stood near one tree with a basket hooked over one arm and a determined squint in her eyes. Well, if it ain't my two favorite heroes, she said sweetly, voice like warm molasses. I just finished baking a fresh batch of apple tarts. Come by and get a whiff. Jake zipped over so fast his feet didn't touch the ground. Did you say tart? Tree Trunks giggled and waved them inside her little cottage. It smelled heavenly, a mix of cinnamon, sugar, and bubbling fruit. The kitchen table was already set for three, complete with mismatched teacups and tiny forks. Every day should have a little sweetness, Tree Trunks said, pouring them tea from a pot shaped like a chubby owl, even if you're not saving the world. Finn took a bite of the tart. The crust crumbled just right, and the filling was warm and soft with just a touch of spice. It was the kind of flavor that made you close your eyes and forget time for a while. Thanks, Tree Trunks, Finn mumbled with his mouth half full. This is like healing. He held up a fork like a scepter. I now proclaim this tart the queen of snacks. After lunch, they lingered a bit in her backyard where a few bees buzzed lazily over the wildflowers. Jake lay on his back in the grass, letting the sun warm his belly like a lizard. Finn found a dandelion and blew the seeds into the air, watching them float away like wishes. Eventually, though, it was time to keep moving. They waved goodbye to Tree Trunks, who handed them a small box of extra tarts, just in case, and made their way deeper into the woods, not with a mission, but with a mood. Their wandering led them past little-known corners of the land, a pond shaped like a footprint, a tree whose bark looked suspiciously like a sleepy old man's face, and a circle of mushrooms that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent light. Jake stopped at the mushroom ring, one eyebrow raised. You think these glowy guys are magical or just radioactive? Finn crouched down, squinting at them. I like to believe they're enchanted, like they're protecting something underground, or telling a secret in mushroom code. Jake poked one gently. Or they're just super into being fungi. Get it? Fungi? Finn groaned, but laughed anyway. You've been hanging around BMO too much. They wandered into a clearing soon after, where a patch of soft moss had blanketed the ground like a quiet invitation. Jake plopped down first, arms behind his head. Break time, he announced. Finn joined him, lying back so that the sky filled his view vast and impossibly blue, clouds drifting by like sleepy sheep. He watched one slowly shift into the shape of a sword, then a burrito, then just a cloud again. He said softly, it's weird how peaceful it is today, like the world forgot to be loud. Jake cracked an eye open. Maybe it didn't forget. Maybe it's just taking a nap. They lay there for a long while, the quiet wrapping around them like a lullaby. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Somewhere far off, a bird sang a melody Finn didn't recognize, soft and aimless. Eventually, Finn sat up slowly. Want to check the river? Jake yawned and stretched. Lead the way, oh peaceful warrior. They wandered off again, unhurried, unbothered, and entirely themselves, just two friends in a wide, magical land, with nothing to do and nowhere urgent to be. And so the afternoon unfolded a slow dance of shadows and sunlight, of idle thoughts and half-whispered jokes. Midday didn't need monsters. It just needed moments like this. Eventually, the forest began to thin. Finn and Jake emerged into a gentle clearing where dappled sunlight spilled across a cluster of wildflowers, pinks and pale blues, gently swaying in the wind. The grass here was impossibly soft, and the air smelled faintly of mint and moss. Jake flopped down in the middle of it with a satisfied sigh, his limbs stretching out like melting butter. Finn sat beside him, plucking a long blade of grass and sticking it between his teeth like a faux cowboy. "Hey," Finn murmured, looking at the treetops. "Remember when we built that little raft for that frog king? The one who said his kingdom was just temporarily aquatic." Jake chuckled. "He still owes us 50 leaf bucks." They lay in that clearing for a while, not asleep, just existing. There's something sacred about shared silence, the kind that only comes with long friendships and even longer afternoons. Overhead, birds chirped softly. A distant woodpecker tapped out a slow rhythm on a tree trunk, nature's lullaby. Eventually, a flicker of color caught Finn's eye, something bright and yellow flitting between the trees. "Dude," he whispered, nudging Jake. "Did you see that?" Jake blinked, rolled onto his side. "A butterfly?" "No, I think it was Banana Man, or someone with bananas." Intrigued, the two rose, brushing off twigs and flower petals, and followed the motion. It led them deeper into a less familiar part of the woods, not dangerous, just lightly forgotten. Vines crisscrossed the path, and patches of mushrooms grew in perfectly circular formation. At one point, Jake had to stretch tall like a giraffe to peek over a thick hedge, only to come back down looking entirely bewildered. "There's a tiny library back there," he muttered, "made of moss, and a hedgehog was checking out a book." They didn't press further. Some mysteries are better left untouched, like secret places that only show themselves when your heart is quiet enough. Eventually, they reached the base of a very old tree, one with a wide hollow in its trunk. Inside the hollow was a little door painted green with golden vines. A soft hum came from within, the kind that vibrated in your chest more than your ears. It wasn't threatening, just curious. Jake, being Jake, tapped lightly on the door. "Anyone home?" No answer. But the wind picked up slightly, carrying with it a faint scent of warm cinnamon and stories not yet told. "Weird," Finn said, but smiled anyway. "Let's keep moving." So they did. By now, the sun had passed its peak, drifting lazily across the sky as the heat mellowed into a comfortable warmth. The two friends found themselves wandering toward a tiny river that cut through the hills. It wasn't wide, but it was fast, with little glittering rapids and smooth stones on either bank. Jake leapt across effortlessly while Finn opted to remove his boots and wade through, the cool water sending a shiver up his spine. On the other side, Jake had already turned into a flatboat version of himself. "Get on, bro. Next stop, Driftville." Finn climbed aboard, laying back as Jake floated along the current, steering with his little tail rudder. It wasn't exactly a grand quest, no evil to fight, no princess to rescue, but that was kind of the point. These were the days that slipped between the cracks of memory, but somehow made up the core of who they were. The quiet adventures, the slow drifting, the laughter between yawns. After a few minutes of lazy sailing, they spotted something sticking out of the mud on the riverbank, a large half-buried spoon with mysterious runes etched along the handle. "Whoa," Finn said, hopping off the Jake boat to retrieve it. "Is this Spoon of Destiny stuff?" Jake shrugged. "Or maybe someone just lost their soup gear. Either way, they kept it, because you never know when a magical spoon might come in handy." Further downstream, they stopped by a stone where bees liked to gather, but not for the reasons you might think. These bees were musical. buzzing not randomly but in harmony, as if rehearsing for some unseen concert. One particularly round bee hovered right near Finn's ear and buzzed a perfect C note. He tried humming along, and to his delight, the rest joined in. For 5 whole minutes, Finn and the bees performed a sleepy, droning chorus, low and soft and just slightly off-key in the most charming way. Jake watched from the bank, tapping his paw in time. Eventually, the bees drifted away, humming into the trees. Finn, now feeling just a little more magical than before, sat down on the stone and looked around. "This day feels like a dream," he said. Jake nodded. "Yeah, one of the good ones." They stayed there a while longer, feet in the water, heads full of sky, until the sun began tilting into late afternoon. The shadows grew longer, the breeze cooler. It was time to head back. But even the journey home held its own quiet surprises. A squirrel ran up to them with a pine cone hat. A cloud shaped exactly like BMO floated overhead. At one point, Jake paused mid-step and whispered, "Do you hear that?" It was distant, faint, but unmistakable. The soft plink, plink, plink of a xylophone being played in the trees. Not frantic, not fast, just a slow, thoughtful tune carried gently on the wind. Finn closed his eyes, letting the melody wrap around his thoughts. Whatever creature or force was playing it, they weren't doing it for an audience. It wasn't for show. It was just for the sake of the music, for the joy of existing in a moment and giving it sound. That's the kind of day it was. There's something oddly enchanting about those quiet parts of the land of Ooh, where nothing urgent happens, and yet everything feels deeply alive. By the time the sun reaches its gentle peak, Finn and Jake find themselves just beyond the whispering hills, where the tall grass sways with a rhythm that only they seem to notice. Jake's belly grumbles again, not from hunger this time, but from something else. He stretches wide, transforming his limbs into long, lazy paddles as he glides down a grassy slope, belly first, like a toboggan in summertime. Finn laughs and follows, arms out like wings. They tumble into a field of buttercups, where everything is still. No monsters, no evil wizards, just the occasional passing cloud and the buzz of lazy bees going about their day. It's in these moments, absurd and quiet and a little silly, that their friendship shines the brightest. No words need to be exchanged. No quests or maps or crown jewels, just laughter, grass stains, and a moment to exist. Eventually, they make their way to a spot they visited many times, but always feels new. The old silent pond nestled behind a ring of mushroom-topped trees. Here, time slows down even more. A few frogs croak in harmony from a lily-pad choir. One of them wears a tiny paper crown Finn made during an earlier visit. Jake lets out a small, approving chuckle and plucks a reed from the water, chewing it casually like a cowboy in an old western. Finn tosses pebbles across the surface, watching them skip. 2 hops, then 3, then plop. The ripples dance and fade, just like sleepy thoughts. They spend a good chunk of the afternoon here, watching the world happen. A snail crawls lazily across a log. A family of ducks float by in a line, the tiniest one in the back trying hard to keep up. Jake softly hums a tune, or something that might be from a dream or a lullaby he once heard. Finn, meanwhile, rests back on the mossy bank, his fingers behind his head, eyes half closed. Finn says quietly, not every day needs to be about slaying stuff or saving kingdoms. Jake nods. Sometimes the world saves itself by just existing. And it's true. The peace doesn't come from doing nothing. It comes from not needing to do anything. The trees sway, and the air is thick with the warmth of the sun and the promise of absolutely nothing on the to-do list. It's the kind of moment that sneaks up on you, like a nap you didn't know you needed. Eventually they get up, not because they want to, but because the shadows are stretching, and BMO might be getting bored back at the treehouse. Their feet brush against the soft trail of white flowers that seem to have grown just for them, as if the land itself is gently nudging them homeward. On the way back, they don't talk much. There's no need. Finn hums a tune, one Jake doesn't recognize, but it's soft and wandering, like a lullaby without words. A tune for a world without chaos. Just wind and clouds and the promise of banana pancakes waiting back home. If not today, then tomorrow. Pass an old tree with names carved into the bark. Finn pauses to run his fingers over the initials. Some are his, some are names long gone. One simply reads, PBM. Another, Simon was here. Jake pats his back, a silent acknowledgement of all the memories folded into their land like pages in a well-worn storybook. And then they reach the final bend before the treehouse peeks into view, its crooked roof catching the sunlight like a wink. Home is close. The kind of home that smells like wood and waffles and BMO's battery charger. The kind of home that doesn't just exist in a place, but in a rhythm, a shared beat. A quiet adventure that always circles back to the beginning. Finn picks a sprig of mint growing near the path and tucks it behind his ear. Jake rolls his eyes fondly, but doesn't say anything. And just like that, the midday journey fades into the soft amber of late afternoon, where new stories quietly wait on the horizon. But for now, nothing else needs to happen. And so, with tired limbs and content hearts, they step through the grass, one lazy footstep after the other, as the treehouse doors swing open to welcome them back, just like always. The sun's golden threads have slowly slipped behind thick, sleepy clouds. Outside, a gentle patter begins, raindrops tapping on the wide treehouse windows like nature's lullaby. Not a storm, nothing loud or scary, just a calm, steady drizzle that softens the world and brings everyone inside. Inside the treehouse, the mood shifts. There's a hush, almost sacred. The kind of quiet that makes you whisper without meaning to. Jake stretches across the couch with a content sigh, one long arm slung lazily over the backrest. He's got a thick, fluffy quilt thrown over half his body, like a lazy noodle cocoon. Finn stands nearby, gazing out the round window, his forehead gently resting against the glass. Looks like adventuring's off for today, he says, more to himself than anyone else. Jake grins, not opening his eyes. Rainy day rule, dude. That means maximum chillage. There's something beautifully ordinary about these quiet afternoons. The kind where nothing big happens, and that's the whole point. Finn and Jake settle into their cozy routines, ones that only happen when the world tells you to slow down. BMO is already on it. Wearing a tiny knitted sweater pink, with a yellow lightning bolt stitched in the middle, they hop into the room balancing a tray with 2 steaming mugs of peppermint hot chocolate. I made cozy drinks, BMO sings, setting them down on the stump-turned coffee table. Finn grabs his mug, wraps his hands around the warmth, and lets the steam brush against his face like a tiny cloud hug. You're the best, BMO, he murmurs. I know, BMO replies sweetly, then does a small twirl before hopping onto a beanbag. The living room of the treehouse is bathed in soft, golden lamplight. The crackle of a modest fire flickers from the stone fireplace. Jake pulls a book off the shelf, something with a worn leather cover, and a bookmark made from a dried leaf. All right, you guys in the mood for a story? Jake asks, stretching a little more, becoming almost blanket-shaped. Finn nods. Only if you do the voices. Jake chuckles. Always. The rain continues its dance on the leaves outside, a steady hush that sinks with the flick of each page. Jake begins reading, his voice warm and slow, the kind of tone that makes your eyelids feel heavier with every sentence. The book isn't epic or dramatic. It's not about quests or curses or villains. It's just a story about a wandering hedgehog who builds a floating house out of forgotten dreams. Strange, sweet, and full of quiet wonder. Exactly their speed on an afternoon like this. While Jake reads, Finn leans back into a pile of mismatched cushions, one leg tucked under him, his eyes half-lidded. He's listening, not just to the words, but to the room the creaks of the treehouse would, the occasional puff from the fireplace, and BMO quietly humming as they doodle on a pad with neon crayons. There's something about rainy afternoons that turn the simplest things into rituals. A sip of cocoa, a shared laugh over a silly line in the book, the way the light flickers against the bookshelf. Even the occasional silence feels like a presence, a shared understanding between them, that peace doesn't need to be explained. Eventually, Jake drifts off mid-chapter. His voice fades out, his snoring picking up exactly where the plot left off. Finn doesn't mind. He carefully marks the page and places the book back down. For a moment, he just watches his best friend snore softly, wrapped in warmth, tail twitching slightly with each sleepy exhale. Finn stretches and pads quietly over to the window again. The rain is still falling, softer now. He watches the droplets race down the glass in winding patterns, like tiny stories being written and erased all at once. The world feels small and in the best way. He wonders if this is what being safe really feels like. Not just from danger or monsters or world-ending threats, but safe in a soul-deep, slow breath kind of way. No sword, no missions, just the sound of rain and friends within arm's reach. The raindrops have thickened now, tapping faster, and with a little more weight against the windows. They stream lazily down the glass in crooked rivulets, bending the outside world into soft watercolor shapes, the tree trunks, the faraway mountains, even the sky itself all melted together like a dream fading at the edges. Inside, though, it's warm. The treehouse hums with gentle stillness, like it's listening to the storm, too. Finn's still perched in the bay window, sketchbook now forgotten beside him. His gaze drifts as he follows the path of a single raindrop trickling down the pane. Jake, meanwhile, has sprawled out on the couch, stretching every limb to absurd lengths, just to reach the fuzzy blanket at the far end. His eyes are half-lidded, his body in full nap mode, but you can tell he's still present, absorbing the moment. You know, Jake murmurs lazily, rain like this always makes me want to eat something spicy, like pepper jelly on pancakes spicy. Finn chuckles. You just want to eat pancakes. Guilty as charged, Jake says with a contented yawn, his voice barely above a whisper. But seriously, tell me that doesn't sound cozy. From the kitchen, a cheerful sound rises, the clink of something ceramic, the whir of BMO's little hands working a makeshift hot cocoa station. They've taken it upon themselves to brew something warm, their little screen flickering with a dancing mug graphic as they sing softly to themselves. I am the Cocoa Queen, BMO hums, maker of mugs, frother of fluff. Finn calls out gently, Hey BMO, you need help? Nope, I am in my element, BMO chirps, but I do require a cinnamon stick. That is what makes it fancy. Jake, still stretching, uses a long noodle arm to open a high cupboard without getting up. Fancy stick, coming up, he says, placing the cinnamon on the counter beside BMO with a theatrical wink, before retracting his arm like a tape measure. Finn shakes his head and grins, turning back to the window. Beyond the walls, thunder gently rolls in the distance like the slow creak of a mountain settling into its dreams. The treehouse gives a little sympathetic groan in response. Old wood and rain-soaked branches shifting in harmony with the storm. Finn finally peels himself away from the window and pads toward the fireplace. It's already been kindled probably by Jake earlier, and now the flames flicker low and lazy, casting dancing shadows on the floorboards. He crouches beside it, adjusting a log here, poking a coal there, not out of need, but ritual. There's something centering about tending a fire in the rain, something ancient. The trio gathers slowly near the warmth. Jake drapes his elongated body over a floor cushion, tucking in around himself like a cat. Finn settles cross-legged, hands wrapped around his cocoa. BMO parks right between them with their own tiny mug, mostly foam, entirely joy. For a while, they don't say anything. Just the fire crackling, the rain tapping, the occasional clink of ceramic. No quests, no monsters, no kingdoms to rescue. Just this. After a few minutes, Jake speaks again, voice quiet, thoughtful. "Remember that one time we tried to build a water slide from the roof?" he says, eyes closed but smiling. "Straight into the pond? And we forgot to patch the holes in the tarp," Finn adds with a soft laugh. "We just kind of flopped down onto the grass." "You look like a soggy burrito," Jake mumbles. "A very brave burrito." "Thanks, man." The memory hangs in the air like steam, warm and nostalgic. There's something about rain that brings those kinds of moments back. Maybe because everything slows down just enough to notice the tiny things the first time they painted the treehouse walls. The way the wood smells after a storm, the creaky stair near the kitchen that always sings when you step on it. BMO finishes their cocoa with a proud sigh. Delicious. Now we must have indoor adventure. Jake peeks one eye open. "What kind of adventure?" "Imagination-based," BMO says with a dramatic flourish. "I have prepared an activity. Behold!" They toddle over to a stack of old board games and maps, pulling out a hand-drawn adventure sheet. "Dungeons Dunions," BMO announces. "The rainy day edition." Finn's eyes light up. "Oh, man, I haven't played that in forever." Jake groans playfully, but is already shifting into a more upright pose. All right, but I get to be the wizard this time. Last time, you made me play a sentient mop." "That mop was very wise," Finn teases. "And very wet." BMO giggles, spreading out the sheet. The fire crackles behind them. The rain softens just slightly, like it's leaning in to listen. The three of them settle into their roles, voices shifting into character as the game begins. And just like that, a new adventure is born, not of swords or monsters, but of cozy magic spun from rainy afternoon dreams and shared stories. So there they sat, side by side on the rug, the dull patter of rain muffling the world beyond the walls. Jake had contorted himself into the shape of a beanbag chair, something he often did when he was feeling cozy, and Finn lay sprawled across him, arms behind his head, a lazy grin resting on his face. "Remember when we got trapped in the dungeon train for ever?" Finn said suddenly, staring at the ceiling. Jake chuckled. "Yeah, and you were super into it, like freakishly into it." "I was worried, dude." Finn laughed. "Well, yeah, it was endless leveling up, like an adventure buffet. But yeah, I guess it kind of wore me out." Jake nodded slowly. "Sometimes chill time is more heroic than sword swings. You just gotta know when to rest." The warmth of the room, the hum of the fireplace, the ambient glow of lamps, they all seemed to wrap around the boys like a giant sleepy hug. BMO, perched atop a pillow tower nearby, was deep in focus, drawing in a little sketchbook with a crayon held between two buttons. "What you drawing, BMO?" Jake asked, cracking one eye open. "I am drawing my perfect rainy day," BMO replied dreamily. "See? There is me, and a giant marshmallow fort, and 1,000 kittens playing ukuleles." "Respect," Finn said. "A little chaotic. I like it." Just then, thunder rumbled softly in the distance. Not loud or scary, just deep and thoughtful. The kind of thunder that doesn't crash into your day, but passes through it like a yawn. They all fell quiet for a while, watching the glow of the fireplace and the hypnotic sway of shadows dancing across the wooden walls. The treehouse felt especially alive in moments like this, its creaks and groans perfectly in tune with the storm outside. Every so often, the wind would nudge the windows or rustle the high-up branches, like it was checking in on them. Jake eventually shifted forms again, curling around like a big donut, making space for Finn to lie in the center. "You know," Jake said, voice thick with drowsiness, "days like this, they're like emotional soup. Everything kind of simmers." Finn smirked. "That's weird. But yeah, I get it. Right? Like, you're not sad, you're not excited, you're just here. And that's okay," Finn murmured. Outside, the rain grew a little heavier, making a soft drumming sound on the thick canopy of leaves above the house. A few drops trickled down the bark and over the glass panes, forming winding rivulets that chased each other toward the sills. "Want to read something?" Finn offered. Jake lifted an arm lazily. "If it's not the cookbook again." "Nope," Finn said, reaching over to the side table. He pulled out a well-worn book titled Tales of the Cosmic Owl. "I haven't read this one in a while." "Ooh," Jake murmured. "Dreamy stuff. Hit me with it." Finn opened the book, the paper crinkling with familiarity. His voice dipped lower, soft and slow, as he read aloud. "In the dreamscape, all things speak without mouths, move without legs, and sleep inside themselves." As Finn read, BMO cozied in closer, propped up against Jake's tail like a warm cushion. The flickering firelight cast golden halos over their faces, and the book's words seemed to float above them like drifting leaves. Time didn't feel like it was moving forward anymore. It was as though the rainy afternoon had become a little pocket of eternity, safe, simple, suspended in amber. Later, they'd probably get up and make some tea, or maybe heat up that leftover everything burrito Jake had saved in the fridge. But for now, they were content to lie there, quiet and still, letting the sound of rain become their lullaby. And in the softest corners of the treehouse, where cobwebs clung to beams and forgotten treasures rested in shadows, the spirit of the place seemed to sigh in contentment. This was home. Not because it was full of action or noise, but because, even in its most silent, rainy moments, it held them, safe, together, dreaming with open eyes. Even as Finn continued to read, his voice began to slow, not from lack of interest, but because the room was gently coaxing them all into stillness. His words trailed like mist through the air. In dreams, even the quietest memory can roar like thunder. He paused. "You asleep, Jake?" he whispered. Jake gave a small snore in response, not quite asleep, but deep in that soft limbo just before it. His chest rose and fell gently beneath Finn's head, the steady rhythm syncing with the gentle pattering outside. BMO, meanwhile, had finished their masterpiece and gently folded the crayon sketch into a tiny origami star. "I am saving this for later," BMO whispered to no one in particular, placing it inside a small drawer in their chest. Then, curling up beside the boys, BMO's screen dimmed to a soft navy glow like the last flicker of twilight before sleep. The rain began to shift. Less a pitter-patter and more a steady hush, like waves gently brushing sand. The storm, it seemed, was beginning to wind down, growing tired with the rest of them. From above, a faint shaft of golden-gray light filtered through the upper branches of the treehouse, illuminating the dust motes floating lazily in the air. Finn blinked slowly, his eyes following one of the motes as it drifted like a tiny sky lantern. He set the book aside without marking the page. He didn't need to. The words weren't going anywhere. Like everything else in this moment, they felt timeless. His thoughts began to wander in the way only peaceful thoughts do. He thought about the rainy days of his childhood when he'd press his face to the glass and imagine the drops were falling from a giant above the clouds. He remembered the first time he realized he liked rain, not because it was exciting, but because it gave him permission to slow down, to just be. Rainy days didn't ask for anything. No dragons to slay, no dungeons to dive, no problems to fix, just the sound, the quiet, and the warmth of the people around him. The smell of something soft and sweet began to waft through the air. Jake must have started baking in his sleep again. Finn could smell hints of banana, cinnamon, and whatever weird ingredient Jake always added that made things taste vaguely magical. He smiled. No doubt Jake would wake up in a bit and pretend it was all part of a plan, then leaned back, shifting gently so BMO had more room. He closed his eyes, listening not just to the storm but to the creaking of the house, the occasional shift in Jake's snooze, the way BMO's screen hummed ever so slightly. Even the floor seemed to sigh beneath them, the old wood carrying every story it had ever held like a quilt of time. It was the kind of afternoon that didn't need to be remembered to be special. It was the memory, unfolding in real time. He opened his eyes just long enough to glance at the clock on the wall. The hands hadn't moved much, but neither had they needed to. For a moment, Finn wondered if time slowed down on purpose during the rain. Maybe the universe knew we all needed more time for these kinds of days. Or maybe it was just the treehouse, their sanctuary, a space between everything, carved out of adventure and shaped by every laugh, tear, and sleepy afternoon they'd ever known. The light from the fire dimmed a little, but still glowed enough to make shadows flicker across the ceiling. One looked like a star, another like a sword, another like Jake in a funny hat. Finn let his mind wander through them, exploring stories that didn't need to be told, only felt. Eventually, he whispered, "Thanks for the rain, Sky Dude." Whether the sky heard or not didn't really matter. It had already given them everything they needed. And so the rainy afternoon indoors drifted gently toward evening, not with fanfare or a burst of activity, but with a sigh, a smile, and the kind of peace that only comes when you know, deep down, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Wrapped in blankets, surrounded by warmth, held in the arms of a home built from years of friendship and quiet understanding, the treehouse slumbered right along with its heroes. Outside, the storm whispered its last few drops to the earth and moved on. Let's step outside with Finn and Jake onto the wide porch that wraps gently around their home like a hug and enjoy a moment of stillness as the sun begins its slow descent into sleep. The air is still damp from the afternoon rain, rich with the scent of wet bark and earth. Tiny droplets linger on the edges of leaves, catching the fading light like lazy fireflies. There's a soft breeze blowing through the branches above, just enough to keep the wind chimes on the roof whispering faint metallic lullabies. Jake is the first to shuffle out, wearing his loosely tied house robe and holding two mismatched mugs in his stretchy arms. One mug is chipped, the handle barely clinging on, but it's Finn's favorite, shaped like a lion's head with googly eyes that wobble when you drink. Jake's is smooth and round, painted in faded purple swirls that used to glow in the dark when it was new. They settle into their wooden rocking chairs, those old creaky thrones of peace. You can almost hear them sigh in unison as their bodies ease into the familiar groove of the seat, back sinking, eyes half-lidded. Finn takes his tea with a splash of honey and a slice of lemon. Not too hot. Jake's is more chaotic, a mix of whatever was left in the pantry. Some dried petals from Wildberry Kingdom, a couple of cloves, maybe even a pinch of root beer powder. He calls it Jake juice and claims it's good for post-nap wisdom. The two of them sit in silence for a while, letting the porch rockers do most of the work. They sip slowly, breathing in the golden air. There's something about the sky at this time of day, when the sun isn't in a hurry anymore, that makes everything feel suspended, like the day has paused to enjoy its own ending. Far in the distance, the Candy Kingdom glows like a soft candle, its buildings and towers soaking up the warm light. Plump clouds stretch across the sky, painted in streaks of tangerine, rose, and sleepy lavender. Occasionally, a passing bird dips low to catch the last bits of warmth rising off the treetops. BMO joins him after a few minutes, climbing onto the porch railing and holding a thimble filled with tea. Not for drinking, just for the ritual of it. BMO likes to pretend it's a ceremony. He calls this the Hour of the Gentle Chip, named after that one time he dropped a biscuit in the tea and said it made everything more sophisticated. Today was good, Finn says, mostly to the sky. Yeah, Jake answers, stretching his toes out so far they graze the porch railing. Even the rain felt kind. They start sharing little nothings. The kind of conversations only best friends know how to have. About what shape clouds look like. Jake swears he saw one shaped like Lady Rainicorn holding a pizza, or about a memory that popped into Finn's head from their dungeon-crawling days. Nothing urgent. Just things you say when the day doesn't need fixing. The tea cools as they sip, and soon they're not even drinking it anymore, just holding the warmth in their hands like a secret. Finn sets his mug down on the arm of the rocker, careful not to spill the last sip that clings to the bottom. He leans back, stretching his legs and letting one arm hang loosely off the side, fingertips brushing the floorboards. His hair, longer now, tied loosely behind him, shifts gently with the breeze. He looks content, but not just because the tea is warm or the porch is peaceful. It's the kind of contentment that only comes when you feel like you're exactly where you're meant to be. Jake's eyes are closed, his chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. He's not asleep, but he's definitely somewhere in the space between thoughts, half lulled by the creak of the porch swing and the glow of the sinking sun. Every now and then one of his ears perks up like he's catching a faraway melody only dogs can hear. BMO hums softly from his perch, legs dangling over the edge like wind chimes made of little plastic limbs. He's watching the horizon like it's a movie, narrating softly to himself about how the sun is a hero making its final stand, and how the trees are the audience, clapping with their leaves. From inside the house, the scent of something baking drifts out. It's unclear what it is. Maybe one of the leftover sweet rolls that Cinnamon Bun dropped off, or a half-forgotten pie from earlier in the week reheated just for the smell. But it doesn't really matter. The porch is its own little world now, separated by soft air and golden light. Finn's gaze follows a drifting speck in the sky, a lone balloon, maybe from a birthday in the nearby village. It wobbles and twirls, eventually disappearing into a wisp of lavender cloud. He smiles at it, then turns to Jake. Do you ever think about, what we'd be doing if we didn't live here? He asks. Not because he wants to leave, but because the question fits the moment. Jake opens one eye. Like if we lived on a boat, or in a cave, or on top of a mountain. Jake thinks about it. Nah, man, this porch, this sunset, this tea, this is it. This is the top of the mountain. Finn chuckles, nodding. Yeah, guess so. A low hum rises from the forest floor as night insects begin to tune their instruments. Cicadas, crickets, distant frogs, all adding their voice to the dusk symphony. The rhythm is slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the world as it winds down. Off in the distance, you can hear Tree Trunks sing to herself through her kitchen window. The notes are soft, maybe a lullaby or one of her apple-picking tunes, and they drift through the trees like the scent of honey. It's the kind of background music you almost don't notice until it's gone. BMO lifts his little thimble, salutes the sun, and says, "To the day. Thank you for everything." Finn raises his empty mug in agreement. "Yeah. Thanks, Day." Jake, too relaxed to move much, lifts a lazy paw in solidarity. The sky is deepening now, the golden hues melting into plum and indigo. Stars begin to peek out like shy party guests, hesitant but curious. A soft hush settles over everything, not heavy but reverent. The day is bowing out, and night is beginning its watch. Finn stands slowly, stretching his back with a satisfying crack. "Think I'll go right for a bit," he says, stepping back inside. "Might sketch that balloon." Jake doesn't answer. He just rocks a little slower, watching the last light tuck itself behind the horizon. Inside, the house as is quiet, but lived in. The wooden floorboards creak softly beneath Finn's feet as he heads toward his little writing nook near the window. It's nothing fancy, just a sturdy desk made from driftwood, a comfy old chair, and a stack of worn notebooks, piled high like a crooked tower of ideas. The window beside it looks out onto the porch and the stretch of forest beyond. Even inside, the colors of the sunset still bathe the room in a golden warmth, soft and sleepy. Finn flips open one of his journals and pulls a pencil from a jar of mismatched writing tools. He doesn't start writing immediately. Instead, he watches the light change, how the orange becomes pink, and then purple, and then blue. His fingers move slowly across the page, sketching the balloon first, just a soft shape on the horizon, and then the porch, with Jake sprawled out and BMO perched like a tiny sentry. It's a memory being made in real time, but captured before it fades. Downstairs, a kettle clicks off with a soft, metallic sigh. The sound doesn't disturb the peace. It fits into it, like a punctuation mark in a lullaby. He writes slowly, pausing often to listen to the world shift. Little thoughts pour out between sketches, musings about the weather, a remembered dream, a funny thing Jake said 3 days ago. He doesn't filter anything. He just lets the words wander, the way clouds drift and reshape themselves. Outside, the last of the sunlight disappears, and the porch glows only by the soft yellow light of a lantern hanging near the door. Jake is still on the swing, now curled into a more relaxed shape, tail drooping off the side like a sleepy comma. His eyes are open but heavy. BMO has turned on his own little screen light. He's tracing stars with his tiny finger, trying to find new constellations. "That one looks like a sandwich," he says to no one in particular. "Maybe a peanut butter one." Finn, still inside, hears it and smiles to himself. He writes "Peanut Butter Galaxy" at the top of the next page and draws a few stars in a swirl. Then there's a soft knock on the door, just a couple of light taps. Finn looks up and says, "Come in," already sensing who it might be. Sure enough, Marceline floats in, her boots not touching the ground, her hair a long shadow behind her. She's holding her bass like always, but she's not here to play anything loud tonight. She hovers just inside, her red eyes catching a glimmer of the last light outside. "Smells like peace in here," she teases, glancing at Finn's notebook. Finn laughs quietly. "Want some tea? There's some left." She shrugs, then nods. "Only if you join me back out there." They both walk out again, the door creaking gently behind them. The sky is fully dark now, and the stars are wide awake, scattered generously, like they've been waiting all day to perform. Jake stirs a little when they sit back down, opening one eye. "Hey, Marcy," he says sleepily. "You missed the golden part." Marceline grins. "I always like the part after that better anyway. When the sky stops trying to impress people and just exists." They sit together in the quiet. No one rushes to speak. There's nothing urgent. The world is in no hurry, so neither are they. The wind changes direction, cool now, brushing through the trees with a sigh. Somewhere far off, an owl calls, low and hollow, like a whisper wrapped in feathers. Marceline floats slightly above her chair, leaning against the backrest without touching it. She looks up at the stars and hums softly, a tune that might not even have words, just a melody that fits the moment. It's familiar and strange all at once, something she's probably been humming for 1,000 years. Finn takes a sip of his refilled tea and lets the warmth anchor him. The porch has always been a place of transition, a place between the forest and the house, between the day and the night. And tonight, it feels like a space where memories are quietly sealed and tucked away in the corners of their minds, gently labeled, "Do not forget." After a while, Marceline sets her bass down beside the porch post and says, "You ever think about how many sunsets we've seen? I mean, not even just the pretty ones, all of them. Even the ones we didn't look up for." Finn nods thoughtfully. "Yeah, but I think the ones we do notice, they're kind of like gifts." Jake stretches his arms above his head and says, "Ain't that the truth? Free gifts from the sky every single day." BMO raises his tiny hand again and declares, "Thank you, Sky." Everyone chuckles. It's sincere. It's soft. It's shared. As the stars shift overhead and the sounds of the forest deepen, it feels less like a gathering and more like a shared dream, one they all happen to fall into together, like kids finding each other in a field of tall grass, lying back to watch the clouds and finding they don't need to say anything at all. Jake leans back further in his seat, folding his arms behind his head, the soft strumming of his banjo now slowing even more, almost becoming a lullaby. Finn sets his mug down, the faint clink of ceramic brushing the air, and stretches his arms above his head, letting out a tiny, satisfied groan. "You ever think about how good this is?" he asks dreamily. "Just this. The tea, the porch, the sky?" Jake nods without opening his eyes. "All the time, bro." For a moment, silence takes over. But it's not an empty silence. It's a full one, brimming with shared memories and comfort. The wind makes its slow rounds again, brushing past the old porch railings and making the wind chimes jingle softly above them, each note like a whisper of the day passing into memory. Behind them, the glow from the treehouse windows begins to bloom, warm golden squares framed by thick wooden walls. BMO's shadow passes in the background, dancing slightly as the little bot moves around, preparing something for later. Perhaps music. Perhaps just more ambience. BMO always knew the right vibe. "Remember that time we tried to catch the last sunbeam of the day?" Finn says, laughing gently as he brings it up. "We were 8 floors up in a tower made of jelly beans." Jake chuckles, opening one eye. "And we jumped. Thought we could ride the beam all the way to the Candy Kingdom." "Totally wiped out," Finn adds. "You landed in a mud pie. I ended up in a cabbage cart." And Mr. Cabbage was not amused. They both laugh, and the sound is so light, so easy. It feels like the sky itself leans in to listen. As the last bit of sunlight clings to the edges of the horizon, something remarkable happens. Fireflies begin to appear, not many, just a few here and there, blinking into existence from the grass below and floating lazily upward, like the stars are waking up inside the earth one by one. Jake watches one land on the tip of his mug and grins. "Hey, little buddy. You on your tea break, too?" Finn shifts to rest his cheek against the porch railing, gazing out toward the horizon. "I wonder what everyone else is doing right now," he muses. Like, Marceline probably writing some song. Evie's probably in her lab doing crazy science. Tree trunks might be making apple pie. Feels like the whole world slows down with us. Jake hums. Maybe it does. Maybe when we pause, everything else takes a breath too. The idea lingers in the air, warm and poetic. From inside, BMO begins to play a tune, soft, sleepy, and gentle. It spills out the windows like syrup over pancakes, slow and sweet. Jake starts to hum along, nodding his head to the beat. Gonna miss this when adventure calls again, Finn says after a while, voice low. Jake responds with something simple but true. But this is an adventure too, you know? Just a different kind. And there it is, the real heart of this sunset moment. That the day, in all its slowness and softness, is its own kind of journey. A treasure in its own right. Not flashy, not epic, but deeply, beautifully ordinary. The colors outside shift one last time. The purples deepen, the oranges fade, and the first real star appears, small but steady, tucked right above the edge of the horizon. Jake tilts his head. First star tonight? Make a wish? Finn smiles. I don't think I need to. Got everything I need right here. And with that, they sit back in their chairs, sip their tea, and watch the last ember of the sun flicker out, letting twilight fully take over. Their world, for now, is quiet, still, safe, and the porch becomes not just the place to sit, but a portal to peace. The last notes of BMO's melody linger in the air like candle smoke curling toward the rafters. Night has officially arrived. Inside the treehouse, the warm golden glow from lanterns spills over old wooden floorboards, casting long, gentle shadows that sway with the breeze. The windows remain slightly open, letting in the hush of the outside world, crickets singing in lazy rhythm, leaves rustling faintly, and the occasional soft hoot of an owl perched high above the canopy. Finn finishes rinsing out his tea mug in the little kitchenette, the clinking of ceramic against the basin echoing quietly in the otherwise still room. He dries it with an old towel patterned with tiny little stars and hangs it back where it belongs. Every motion is slow, intentional. No rush now. Jake, meanwhile, stretches his limbs wide, letting out a long, cartoonishly satisfying yawn as he floats just a little over to the couch. He plops down with a muffled palm, curling up into a relaxed little swirl of dog. I love nighttime, he murmurs, half to himself and half to the ceiling. Finn nods. Me too. Feels like the whole world finally calms down. There's a brief pause filled only by the ticking of a sleepy little wall clock. Then Jake sits up again, eyes gleaming with a sudden thought. Hey, I want to go up to the rooftop and look at the stars? Finn grins. Always. They don't need to say more. It's one of those quiet traditions, no matter how many years go by, no matter how many versions of themselves they become. Some parts of their routine remain eternal. Finn grabs a cozy, slightly faded blanket from the back of the couch, and Jake scoops up a bag of marshmallows for good measure. With a gentle push of the trap door, they make their way up to the rooftop platform, a humble little space built from planks and dreams, tucked beneath the tree's upper branches and open to the endless sky. The view is breathtaking, and not in the dramatic world-ending kind of way they're used to. No, this is the gentle kind of breathtaking, the kind that steals your voice for a moment, not because you're afraid, but because something is just that beautiful. The stars are out in full. No clouds, no moon. Just a sweeping field of constellations, scattered like spilled sugar across black velvet. Finn lays back first, arms behind his head, eyes wide and glittering. Jake flops down next to him, stretching out like a pancake and letting the marshmallow bag rest gently on his belly. Neither of them says anything at first. They just watch. After a while, Finn breaks the silence. You ever feel like those stars are looking back at us? Jake hums. I bet some of them are whole different worlds. Maybe there's another you and me up there right now, lying on a cloud or something, eating even better marshmallows. Finn laughs softly. Think they're happier than us? Jake considers. Hard to say, but I bet they're just as content. The air is cool up here, but the blanket and their shared body heat make it cozy. The branches creak gently above them, old and wise and familiar. They take turns pointing out constellations, some real, some completely made up. Finn insists he can see a sword-shaped one just to the left of the North Star. Jake points out one that looks like a pancake wearing a crown. Together they find one that looks suspiciously like tree trunks doing the tango. Finn's voice lowers as the night deepens. You think stars ever get lonely? Jake rolls over on his side to face him. Maybe, but they got each other, and we've got each other too. The words are simple, but they land heavy and true, like pebbles dropped into a still pond, rippling outward into the night. In the distance, a shooting star cuts across the sky, quick, quiet, and golden. Finn sits up slightly. Make a wish. Jake closes his eyes. Already did. And then they fall quiet again, letting the stars keep watch as the world around them gets sleepier and sleepier. Below, BMO dims the treehouse lights on a timer. The crickets sing softer. Even the wind, it seems, tucks itself in. The world is heading to sleep, and so are its heroes. As the last embers of sunlight fade into the folds of twilight, the entire treehouse takes on a softer glow. The clutter of the day begins to settle, the wildness of playtime and oddball quests, now just faint echoes trailing off like the distant call of an owl from the forest beyond. Jake, ever the connoisseur of cozy, floats gently to the couch and stretches into a puddle of golden fur. He yawns with the kind of slow, theatrical flair only Jake can manage, his limbs flopping out as he melts into the cushions like warm butter on toast. Comfy time, he mumbles, already halfway to dreamland before Finn even finishes turning off the lantern by the kitchen nook. Finn walks slower now, no longer bursting with the same energy from the morning, but calm, content. His footsteps pad softly against the wooden floorboards. He grabs a light blanket from the back of the couch, the one with little doodles they stitched in during one winter storm. Tiny swords, a smiling snail, even a stick-figure version of tree trunks. He wraps it over Jake, who mutters something sleep-mumbly about waffles and cosmic owls, and heads toward the ladder leading to the upper deck. Up here, the air is cool, and the sky, finally free of rain clouds, stretches wide in every direction. It's a good night for stargazing. BMO's already there, sitting neatly on a cushion, holding a handmade paper telescope. Finn, look! I found the constellation that looks like your hat. BMO beams, pointing upward. Finn squints into the darkness, then smiles. You mean that squiggly one that looks like a sideways burrito? No, silly, BMO says, mock indignant. That one's Jake when he's sleeping. Finn chuckles as he sits beside BMO, cross-legged, the chill of the night softened by the lingering warmth of the treehouse behind them. The stars are shy tonight, not as bold or boastful as usual, but there's just enough of them to whisper stories, and so they begin naming them. Not scientifically, but the way only friends do. That one, Finn says, pointing at a tiny sparkle above the horizon, is the flame star. Looks like it could burn your toast from here. And that one, BMO adds, is the ice cream comet. It zooms around, handing out sprinkles. Above them, the wind gently plays with the leaves, carrying with it the scent of pine, moss, and a hint of peppermint from the tea they left on the porch. It's a cool, clean smell, like the forest is exhaling for the night. Jake eventually joins them, eyes half closed, a mug of warm milk in his paw. He flops down next to Finn, not saying much, just a happy little as they all look out together. In the distance, the silhouettes of the Candy Kingdom's towers glimmer faintly like sugar-dusted candle flames. There's no rush now. No quests, no monsters, no schedules. Just time. Slow, syrupy time, unfolding like a lullaby. "Hey, Jake," Finn whispers. "Remember that one time we camped under the stars and thought we saw a shooting star that turned out to be a flaming marshmallow?" Jake chuckles softly. "Oh, yeah. It landed in your hair." "Smelled like campfire for a week," Finn grins. BMO giggles, rocking back and forth. "I missed that night. We told so many stories, remember?" And so they begin again. Little bedtime tales, not of heroes or battles, but of inside jokes and quiet wins, like the time they found a perfectly round rock, or built a mini ramp for a squirrel with a cast. Their voices get softer with each passing minute, the kind of talking people do when sleep starts curling around the edges of their minds like a cat circling a warm spot on the floor. The stars, too, seem to settle, less twinkly, more gentle, as if they're leaning in to listen. Inside the treehouse, the lights dim down to a flicker. A candle in the kitchen gives off a faint vanilla glow. The smell mixes with the wood and the rain-soaked earth outside. It's the scent of bedtime. BMO begins to hum, a soft little melody that might be made up, might be from some game menu no one remembers, or might be a lullaby they've carried in their circuits for years. It doesn't matter. It fits. The sound drapes over everything like a soft blanket. Finn leans back on his elbows. "You know," he murmurs, "some days are wild, but days like this, where nothing big happens?" Jake nods. "Yeah, kind of perfect." And with that, they fall quiet again. With the last of the fireflies blinking in the bushes and the candlelight slowly dimming in their mugs, Finn and Jake lean back on the creaky porch swing. It rocks gently in rhythm with the night breeze, each wooden groan like a lullaby echoing through the stillness. BMO's soft chime from inside the treehouse sings a melodic "Good night, sweethearts," and the sound trails off as BMO puts itself into sleep mode, battery blinking a soft blue through the window. Jake stretches, limbs elongating slightly before bouncing back to shape. "You ever think about how big the universe is?" he asks in that slow, dreamy voice, more to the stars than to Finn. Finn, holding his hands behind his head, breathes in deep. "All the time," he replies. Are there other tree houses out there? Other Usas? Just living their own little day, like we just did?" The stars overhead shimmer like they're listening. One particularly bright one shoots across the sky, leaving behind a slow, trailing glow. Neither of them speaks for a moment. They just watch it go. The wind whispers through the leaves above, like ooh itself is exhaling after a long, contented day. Behind them, the treehouse windows flicker out one by one, the last glow fading from the kitchen. Down below, the grass sparkles ever so faintly, dew already forming from the cooling air. An owl hoots in the distance. Somewhere, a fox yips. It's like the whole land has changed stations, from daytime's adventurous static to nighttime's soft, ambient lullaby. Finn finally rises, stretching out the day from his bones. "I'm hitting the hay," he says softly, patting Jake's shoulder as he heads back inside. Jake gives a lazy thumbs up, choosing to stay on the swing just a little longer. He watches as the stars multiply above him, the deep indigo sky now littered with ancient stories and forgotten wishes. Inside the treehouse, Finn makes his way upstairs with familiar ease, his bare feet padding on worn wooden steps. In his room, a small lantern flickers gently, just enough light to guide him without interrupting the mood of the evening. He tosses his hat onto the dresser and settles into bed with a quiet sigh. His sword leans peacefully against the wall, untouched all day. His pack lies beside it, still half-zipped from his morning's snack run. The air in the room smells faintly of warm wood and clean cotton. He pulls the blanket up to his chest and stares at the ceiling beams, knotted and carved from years of drowsy staring and idle thoughts. Back outside, Jake finally rises too. He floats himself up through the open window into the shared bedroom, then gently folds down like dough into his dog bed. He yawns wide, so wide it almost echoes, and then lets out a slow, rumbly snore just moments after his eyes close. It's a sound Finn's used to, a kind of lullaby he secretly likes. And in the quiet of that room, with the rustling treehouse gently swaying in the breeze, the night finally wraps around them. Stars continue their watch. The moon drifts quietly, proud of her work. But just before sleep fully takes hold, Finn rolls onto his side and whispers, "Good night, Jake." Jake, half asleep, mumbles back, "Good night, bro." And like that, the day fades, slowly, softly, into dreams. The kind of dreams only peaceful days can grow. Dreams full of treehouse mornings, BMO breakfasts, tiny adventures, and long, thoughtful sunsets. The world outside their window continues turning, the lights of distant kingdoms flickering and fading in the distance. But here, nestled high in a cozy treehouse, two best friends sleep soundly, wrapped in the simplest kind of magic. Not the kind with spells or swords or monsters, but the kind made of shared laughs, old blankets, and quiet nights under starlit skies. And as we drift too, dear sleepyhead, may your dreams be just as gentle, filled with soft winds, peaceful thoughts, and the quiet hum of a world that waits for you patiently until morning returns. Time passes slowly in the treehouse at night. The stars don't rush. The moon doesn't hurry. Everything settles into a rhythm that feels older than memory. Downstairs, the furniture creaks softly as the wood contracts in the cool air. A hanging pan in the kitchen gently sways, touched by a draft slipping through the window's edge. It clinks once, then stills. The house is breathing, not like a machine, not even like a person, but like a home that's lived 1,000 lives alongside its inhabitants, always listening, always holding them safe. Outside, the grass leans with the wind, making soft rustles that sound like someone whispering bedtime stories to the earth. Crickets chirp in practiced harmony. Distant frogs join in, croaking slow lullabies from hidden puddles and sleepy brooks. Even the clouds have fallen still, just faint ghosts across the indigo sky. Up in their bedroom, Finn's breathing is calm, slow. Jake's snores rise and fall like ocean waves, rhythmic and comforting. BMO's little screen pulses gently, showing an 8-bit dreamscape of clouds and stars. The sword at the wall glints faintly with the moonlight, unused but not forgotten. It's not needed tonight. Not when everything is quiet. Not when everything is okay. It's in these late hours that the treehouse feels most like a cradle. The rooms, the floorboards, the very air, all wrapped around its heroes like a lullaby made of wood and wind. There are no alarms, no monsters, no cries for help. Just peace. Sometimes Finn dreams of adventures, of fighting space liches or diving into lava with a magical suit. But other times his dreams are simple. He dreams of climbing the treehouse when he was little, slipping on a branch and being caught by Jake's stretchy arms. Or of that time they made a pillow fort so big it had its own post office. Or breakfast with bacon pancakes and syrup lakes when the sun poured through the windows just right. Tonight he dreams of stars. He's standing on the treehouse roof, arms outstretched, as a meteor shower dances overhead. The sky blooms in color and movement, like the universe is painting with fire and light. Jake floats up beside him like a balloon, munching a cloud-shaped cookie. They don't talk. They don't need to. The stars speak enough for both of them. Somewhere in that dream he hears music, just faint enough to question whether it's real. It sounds like a lullaby hummed by the wind, or maybe by the treehouse itself. And it carries with it all the day's memories. BMO's pancakes, Rainicorn's visit, their lazy afternoon nap, the quiet conversation under the stars, all wrapped into a soft, glowing feeling. Morning is still hours away, and that's okay. There's no rush, no place they need to be, no mission to prepare for, just the slow drifting into sleep, and deeper still into dream. And now, dear dreamer, you're part of this too. As the final star blinks above the treehouse roof, as the night wraps everything in velvet hush, may your own thoughts quiet too. You've spent time in a place where the world is safe, where best friends share quiet evenings, where time isn't measured by clocks, but by the warmth of moments. Let this story settle over you like a blanket. Let the stillness of the treehouse become the stillness in your chest. Let your breath slow, matching fins. Let your mind float gently like Jake, drifting higher and higher into dreamland. There's nothing else you need to do. Nowhere else you need to go. The adventure has paused, and in this rare stillness, you found a kind of magic that doesn't need fighting or fanfare. It's the magic of rest, of friendship, of home. So close your eyes and let this moment linger. The world of ooh will still be here when you wake. But for now, let go. Let the stars watch over you. Let the wind tuck you in. Let the treehouse keep its quiet vigil. And most of all, sleep well, traveler. Good night.